Hit the lights!
You've discovered the Halfwatt Podcast. We want to educate and entertain by tapping into the most trusted source of new technology, the ones installing and innovating it. You, the tradespeople that build from the ground up. Join us as we talk with industry leaders, veteran contractors, and even some young blood.
Welcome aboard. Wow. Tyler, how you doing?
Great, now that I found that button on my
Those are the best buttons. Do the clapping one.
Oh, here we go.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I want to give special thanks to the director of apprenticeship for CCC, Carrie Nixon, and the director of music, I believe that's his title, for CCC as well, Mr. Lars Campbell, I can speak. So both of these folks really helped secure this room where we're at, Studio B here, at the Oregon City campus of Clackamas Community College.
Yeah, super cool. We were
Super
able
cool.
to kind of walk around and see the whole facility. And we found these rooms that are just studio rooms.
Yep.
And they've been really generous in letting us use one of their, it looks like it was once a very cool, like, recording studio.
Yeah.
It
It looks like it had a lot of stuff here that
it's
the Tasmanian
genuinely,
devil decided to tear off the wall. He got
but,
mad.
you know, if
I think this over here made up a booth. I think
I think it was built. There's like this corner where there's an actual, you can see like it was built out at one point. It's really cool.
I think it's cool. And I think the biggest thing for me is that we came out here to, especially over the summer, to be able to record.
Yeah.
And they have some specific rules that you really can't be in a building that doesn't have a public safety presence.
People, yeah. And
I'm fine with that. And so we came into this building, and this is open until like 10, and then this really, really awesome officer kind of gave us the nickel tour, and we started this email process, and eventually they realized, well, gosh, you're an employee, so you can have access to the room, and they gave us access to the room.
Yeah,
and
man.
It sounds like that's a really minor detail, but it is not. And Carrie and I have communicated back and forth via email so often, that I'm saying 27 or 28
over
emails.
the last like month.
Over the last month and something.
Yeah.
And so this woman bends over backwards for the apprenticeship program. She handles like firefighting, the wildland firefighting, and plumbers, and us, and so it made me as an employee just like jaw-droppingly, I was astounded how she just dogged this all the way through.
Yeah,
like she carried the ball all the way through.
This will be 2 weeks in a row that we're just giving glowing recommendations to IEC.
Yeah, well, and to CCC.
And to CCC.
Because it's been, my experience with working in a large institution with department heads and managers, especially in other areas, like my particular group where I work up on the Hill, is we're dialed in. Like our staff and our managers are like, they're really top notch. I mean, I don't say that to just blow smoke, up their ass. They're really good. And, but when I have to go interface with other departments, sometimes you can really realize
it's easy for people to not be not on top of their game.
It's easy
Lazy.
to watch people faceplant.
Yeah.
And you don't know what you're going to, like certain managers are top notch. Matter of fact, the manager of one of the whole, what we call zones, which runs the whole group, was my workmate. 20 years ago when I worked there, and now he's worked himself into this position of management, and his department runs like a well-oiled machine.
Right.
And the other zone that handles some other stuff up there, their manager walked and went back to some horrible state, and now they're in flux, and so we're waiting to see how that's going to go. And a good manager makes all the difference in the world, is all I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And, one of the things we want to talk about is that for everybody who's out there in the field grinding, sometimes you can be put in positions by managers that are, sort of inappropriate. Like, hey, I need you to do this. It's a little illegal, but we're gonna.
It's a little illegal.
It's
It's like being pregnant. You can't be just a little pregnant.
You're like a little pregnant, and but there's some real bat squeeze that goes on, and I having worked for enough companies and having worked for some managers that I just want to throat punch.
Yeah.
And it turns out that that's frowned upon in most companies. Like, they get all bent out of shape and stuff. But if you were placed in a position where we'll pick on elevators, for example.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when I was a manager at PSI, I was in contact with the state elevator inspector, the chief, the head honcho.
Yeah.
His name's Warren. And he and I were talking, and he goes, I don't want any of these elevators tested without an elevator guy there.
Yeah.
An elevator present.
You would think that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because like we don't have data guys, security camera guys coming in and testing the fire system.
Right. For good reasons.
Right. Like, nothing against them.
No.
They do their job. They're great. They probably wouldn't want to fire a guy messing with their data. Like,
well, they will once.
Yeah, you can help out.
Hey, Mike. Yeah, come over.
8 hours later,
you're not
gone.
Not recommended.
Never again.
Boo.
Like, they have a particular way they want things done, and I mean, not to despair on data guys, but like with fire and with elevator, like those are so important that you really can't be messing around with that stuff.
Right. I had a manager once who basically threw me church keys and said to open up elevator doors. And so I did. I opened up elevator doors and did tops of shafts and stuff like that all the time. My mind my own business as I do, working up off of basically up off of Marine Drive or something like that, one of those areas. And I did what I normally do in a little tiny tilt up, and I did the elevator inspection, and I wrote it off as signed it off and all that good stuff. And I went about my business, including shunt trip, by the way.
Really?
Oh yeah. So, going down the road. A couple months later, I get this call from Kone. Right now, I have a particular relationship with Kone anyway, because they service all of our stuff up on the hill. So I know a lot of these elevator guys, and they know me, and but at that time, they were just another company. So I get a call from their service manager, and she's a really nice lady. And she goes, "Are you Mike Brooks?" I said, "I sure am." She goes, "Can I ask you a question? Hey, how'd you do this elevator inspection in this building?" And I knew exactly which one she was talking about. I said, "I have a church key," flat out, didn't lie to her. And she goes, "How about we make you a deal? How about you never use that church key again? And I don't report you to the state." I said, "You made my whole day." I said, "That is a great deal. I will take that action."
Yeah.
And I honestly, as God is my witness, took all my keys and dropped them on my boss's desk and said, "Pack sand. I'm not doing this anymore."
Yeah.
Get a contractor out there. And I knew it was illegal, but I was doing it anyway.
Sure.
Because, I was in that position where
how old
I needed
were you at
food.
this point? How new into the trade were you at this point?
14 years.
Okay. So wow, you'd been doing it long enough that like what you're doing, and you have even a reputation within your business and all of that.
No, I just like to eat.
Yeah.
It's really honest to God.
Yeah, I get that. I do.
It was like, hey, this is what we do here.
Right.
Here's the mechanism.
Right.
Everybody else is doing it.
And that's where, like, when I come to these conversations, my number one thing is I want to learn and become better. Right. And it's always coming from a place of like, okay, is everybody okay with this? Is this an industry standard that we just do these things, that we do a little bit illegal? It's not that big a deal. Like,
It's just a little
or is
bit.
this my manager? Is this my company?
Right.
Is this my journeyman? Like, who's
setting this standard?
Yeah, that
who's setting
standard
this
setter?
performance standard to break the law?
Because that's where I'm always concerned. I don't want to do things the wrong way.
Right.
But I also don't want to be the guy that's always saying, nah, I'm not going to do that. I know people like that.
I do too. And that can be because I've said, oh, well,
They
won't do it, I'll do it.
There's a middle ground, right?
Yeah.
And we're not going to use real names here because they might listen to the show. But let's say one person's name is Jason and the other person's name is Matt. I don't like made up names. So Jason will not step out of his van unless it's authorized by the NEC or the NFPA 72. He doesn't do anything. And when he goes on site, he is looking for every possible reason to not work. He uses code and company standards and OSHA and anything he possibly can to say, nope, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I work with this person. I know this person. I also work with Matt, who he will work in a state he is not licensed to work in. And when somebody goes, hey, that's illegal, right? He says, the company will pay the fine.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take the hit.
And he works weekends and works for free sometimes because, every once in a while, the jobs just have to get done. And it helps his boss look better.
And the numbers look better.
If he sacrifices his time. So there's this huge difference between these two people I work with. And I go, where in the middle do I fall? Am I more like Matt? Am I more like Jason? Am I directly in the middle? Am I willing to do things illegally as long as it benefits me and I get paid enough to do it, sort of thing? And that's ultimately what I'm trying to figure that out for myself as I'm going on 3 years now as a journeyman. I am still an infant in this world trying to get my ground and go, okay, this is who I want to be.
Yeah, this is who I am. So, the culture of the technicians and the culture of the company and the culture of the management can affect all that. So I worked for a company that was so safety driven that, it tended to be cumbersome.
Yeah.
But their whole philosophy was, you're going to come home the night. If you go out and work, you're going to come home that night.
Yeah.
And I've also worked for the opposite. And I think that the culture of the company, if they've got all the right things in place, they want you to come home.
Yeah.
At the end of the shift.
But sometimes you got to step in places you're not allowed to.
Sometimes, but but like I said, that's where we're not trying to go guardrail to guardrail. So you want to find where you're comfortable at, and then you want to at some point go, hey, you're asking me to go and do something that I know is wrong, and the mechanisms, the leverage that they're placing on you can sometimes be pretty intense. And I receive a lot of texts and phone calls from former students that are now turned out. And some other apprentices and stuff like that. More than once, I'm thinking of a couple of people off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Call me and go, I have a problem with this. Yeah. What should I do? And I can't tell them, you don't want to throw punch your boss. That's wrong. But you definitely have the right to say, no, I'm not going to do that. And stand your ground. And so, but you have to figure out, is that the ground worth fighting?
Right.
Over
are you willing to lose your job over this?
Exactly.
And I think that's
and for one guy, he's changed employers twice,
Right.
Because they put him in
And
those positions.
that's what I get stressed out over.
Yeah, I don't
because
blame
it's
you.
like I don't want to have this conversation every time you guys are asking me to do something illegal. But then that thought in my head now, like this is a real time reaction to that, is if there is a company you're working for where that is every day, every week, even you're having that conversation of, am I willing to get fired over not doing this?
Right.
Then maybe it is time for you to look for a different job. Right? Like if you're constantly going
let's
head to head
suppose that
with
happens.
people.
Suppose you're in that position, and I, as a manager, go, "How about $10 more an hour?" Now,
to break the law?
yeah. Now your integrity is up for sale, right? No, I mean I'm not
Technically,
bullshitting you. This happens.
No, technically it is up for sale. Whether I sell it or not is negotiable. But like, just because someone offers you $10 doesn't mean I'm going to take it.
Yeah,
you know,
no, I
and
get
like, $10 to break the law.
I just threw that. I just pulled that out of my ass. So let's suppose. I mean, suppose. So these things happen. Like you go and say, "Hey, let's have a meeting and talk about this."
Yeah.
And you say, "I'm not going to do this," or "This is too much." Like I could have very well said, "I'm not going to use these church keys."
Right.
Okay. I didn't want to do that because of the
You wanted to
experiences
be
I was
able to-
going through at the time. I needed to have food. So, it wasn't until Kone said, "Hey, I'll make you a deal. You don't do this again ever on anybody's machine. And we'll call it a wash."
Good. Yeah.
And then I had the leverage to go back and say, Kone said no.
Yeah.
And when they said no, they meant no.
Right.
And so it's not worth getting fined. It's not worth going to the state. It's not worth getting BCD involved in this process. So the answer is we're done.
Sure.
And that's exactly what I wound up doing. But for whatever reason, I needed that particular tool. That was the wedge that helped get me motivated. And then I went, well, that wasn't what the hell was I thinking? What was I thinking? And so my maturity, I matured a little bit. And then the next, and if you don't think that you can mature in your 40s or 50s or 30s, you're wrong. Because you can't.
Yeah. I mean, you're constantly changing and becoming hopefully better and different. But like, hope. I know there are things where like you look at it. I had a situation where I was doing a panel swap and field device swap, right? And there was a smoke detector that had been installed 20 years ago. And since then they installed a whole HVAC system in this room, and I can't stress enough how impossible it would be to get to this smoke detector without climbing up on top of HVAC ventilation to get up there and change it. Like, it's impossible. And I called my boss and I was like, "Hey, this is what's happening." And he came out and he looked at it and he's like, "Okay." And I gave him the smoke detector. He climbed up, he did the swap, and he climbed back down. Okay. Right. And I was like, "So do you expect that I do that?" And he looks at me, kind of gives me the up and down. Now, if you're a listener and you've never met me, you've never seen me before, I'm a big guy. I'm 350 on a good day.
You're not petite?
I'm not petite. Okay.
You're not fragile? Like
I'm fragile as hell, man. But I got a lot of insulation, so it helps.
He made me smart.
But he, and he's like, "I would not expect you to do that." Okay. He's like, "There are other people at this company that I would expect to do that." And I sat with that for a bit. That didn't bother me. That I know how big I am. It doesn't. That's not. He wasn't trying to be offensive in any way.
No,
so that's not kind of what he was doing.
But the idea is that would
he would do it, right? He's a smaller guy. He's capable of climbing up without.
And he's clearly a spider monkey, so that worked out well.
And so there are things where it's like, if I was smaller, I think I probably would have gone, okay, I should start doing things like that because yeah, it's driving me nuts. I don't know what it is.
I think it's the hot water.
Sorry, we've been hearing some tip tapping going on around us. Where
we thought there were maybe mole people climbing through the ceiling.
Yeah,
but it's the expansion of some water pipes or something. So
I still think it's mole people.
You think it's
Mike thinks it's the water.
Mothman is coming.
Water expands and it's hot. Okay, nerd.
Okay,
clearly it's mole people.
It's
Idiot.
mole people.
Now,
so if you hear somebody pounding on in the background on it with a monkey wrench on a pipe, it's not us.
No. So I was just saying I'm willing to do certain things that might be a little questionable, but then that calls into question
it does.
Everything becomes a shade of gray.
Right.
You know
Where
what I mean?
do you draw that line?
Yeah. And is it out of convenience? Is it because I don't want to work? Is it because I go and have a formula of it's X legal versus X illegal, and it's this much dangerous versus this much not dangerous, and I have to do algebra every time I run into something.
Right.
And
to calculate whether
I should do it or not do
exactly.
it. It's tiring. It's just exhausting.
But like I said, where you learn as you go, and you're doing this evaluation to say I can accept this I can do, this I can't do, and then you're setting those boundaries. And if your boss is a good boss, they'll go, look, last week Tyler would climb into a vault without a gas freeing it, and now he won't because he knows that people die in vaults because they don't gas free them. That's a huge thing. When I first got in this industry, I climbed in and out of vaults for years, plural, without even realizing it. And honest to God, it hit me one day. I went, when I was in the military, I never ever climbed into a ship void that wasn't gas free ever.
Right.
And we climbed into voids all the time. Yeah. So especially in the yards. And so I thought, this is dumb. And I went back to my boss and I went, hey man, what are we going to do? And you know what he did? He gave me they had actually bought two, the same exact
the oxygen sniffers.
No. The scuba tanks but not the divers, but what the firefighters wear. They had two of those.
Oh, okay.
And so he gave me one and said, here.
Yeah.
So if I've never worn one of those, I've worn the what the Navy called an OBA, which is a different type of apparatus. And I thought, the hell is this? This takes, you got to get it recharged. You got to know how it works. This is for literally for firefighter use. So I'm like, this isn't really the answer. There's another answer to what we're trying to do here. And so what I did was I looked up and I said, I'll tell you what I won't do. I won't climb in vaults anymore until we get all the proper equipment. And it just took me about, I don't know, the web was not really
a thing.
It was just becoming popular. Okay. Europa, there was a big monkey beating on that pipe. Europa was who we were using I was using as an internet service provider. Yeah. And they were one of three in the city. Earthlink and Europa and AOL and all that jazz. And the web was just in its infancy. So it wasn't like you could just go Google something, Alta Vista or whatever we were using when that browser came out, those search engines and stuff. So we were like, well, this is, but I did wind up running into somebody who was gas freeing, and they kind of said, yeah, there's a whole procedure for going in and out of voids and stuff like that.
Really?
And so I just said, okay, fine. I will trip the tampers, the switches from outside of the pole. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what I did. And if it was a void of any significance, then, and I couldn't reach it, I just didn't do it. I just said didn't have.
Did you ever end up getting any sniffers or anything like that?
No, we weren't even licensed at that particular time.
Because now we have, the little, you put it on your vest and it just sits there and tells you how much oxygen there is. There's expensive ones that tell you how much of how many different types of things you can get. But ultimately, all you need to know is oxygen. Because if all of a sudden you're out of oxygen, that's when you're going to pass out.
Well, there are some other gases you should know about. But oxygen, because you could be in an oxygen deficient atmosphere and get zonked out.
Yeah.
But there can also be other gases mixed in with it that most of them test for 4 gases. They test for like hydrogen sulfide.
Yeah.
And different levels of other gases and the biggest killers are hydrogen sulfide and
methane, right?
Methane. Thank you.
Yeah.
And there's sometimes if you're in an area where they do a lot of welding, argon is a heavy gas. Argon can.
I think maybe we need to do a whole lecture or talk about going into vaults.
Yeah,
I think that
could
be really interesting. Maybe talk about the history of vaults and going in
scary.
and the technology that goes into it.
It is scary because a lot of people, like if you go and look at OSHA and you go to do this kind of training and stuff, they always have videos. Yeah. And in one case, there was a reactor they were working on, and in order to get this reactor to be ready to go back online, they had to purge it with nitrogen. So they're purging the entire reactor with nitrogen.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy was just looking over the top to do his work, didn't realize that there was nitrogen. No oxygen in that nitrogen because it's pure nitrogen.
Yeah.
And he passed out and fell into the void.
Oh my God.
And so then his boss was like, hey, Tommy fell into the bill. So he goes in there, he dies.
Oh no.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what happens is that
I think you told us this during the apprenticeship. Because
exactly.
I remember that's terrifying.
Oh, it's scary. And when you look at the video and they show how this happened.
Yeah.
If you looked at it, you would go, well, that's not a confined space.
Right.
But it is, because the way that the vessel was created is if you looked over the edge, here's all the pipes coming up and nitrogen is pouring out.
Yeah.
So the area around all these vertical pipes had no O2 at all. It was 100% nitrogen. And that's the way they have to run it that way.
It's going to be a scary episode, but I think it is going to be worth listening to. For the safety of people. I just don't want anybody getting hurt. Yeah.
I tell you what, the last biggest permit entry confined space I did, I had my best tech.
Mm-hmm.
I had my best sprinkler fitter with me, or sprinkler guy.
Yeah.
And I did the work.
Yeah.
And we drained the tank, gas freed it, did everything we're supposed to do. I jumped in there, changed out what needed to change out. My alarm guy made sure that the ground fault was cleared and that all the problems, so that everything was working correctly on the ESD system.
Yeah.
And Ryan made sure that the sprinkler system was, exactly how we needed it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and I came back out of the void. So I did the work.
Yeah.
And I was an ops manager at the time. Yeah. And I'm like, no, if I'm not willing to send anybody in if I will not do it myself.
Sure.
And it wasn't that dangerous because we had taken all the right steps. And it was quick. I mean, we were like, when you have your A team,
I go down in vaults all the time.
Yeah.
Like, cause I'm testing for tampers and things all the time. I was in downtown Portland. Goodness gracious.
That monkey's trying to break out.
The mole person. I was in downtown Portland and we're doing this whole job. And we're like, oh, where's the vault? And it's out right on the sidewalk. You open it up and the guys I was working with, they're like, yeah, you should go check it out. And so they hand me the sniffer and I go down there. This freaking vault is almost nicer than my freaking apartment, dude.
Really?
It was big. It was like roomy. Tall. Like, yeah. And it goes like under the building. It goes from the street under the building. And so like, I'm hanging out in there and I do what I need to do. And they're like, you good? And I'm like, yeah, man. I don't just put my lunch down the ladder. I'm gonna hang out here. But yeah, it was just nuts. I can't believe some of the vaults. And I mean, like every time you open it up, it's a different experience.
Yeah.
Every single time. I've had vaults. I've got video of it somewhere where I was in a vault. I was swapping out a loop tamper, and one of the pipes just kind of started tick
dripping.
And I look over and I start climbing out. By the time I climb out, that thing had busted open. And it wasn't like, like a movie style pouring in. But it was a solid like stream. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I took video of it and I went to the guy and I was like, hey, this is happening. He's like, seriously, we just fixed it.
Oh.
And I was like, well, you got to fix it again. And I came back out to do an inspection later, like a year later. And I went down there, tested the loop, look over, and it's.
Is it the packing gland on a OS&Y? Like
it was just this PVC pipe that was coming in and out, and I don't know what it was.
That sucks.
And what we found out, what the guy ended up telling me, he's like, yeah, so we found out that the gravel above is like loose, or not the gravel, but the concrete above is loose, and we have trucks coming in and out all day. Oh, and so because the pressure, it's pushing down on it. So now they have to redo their entire driveway because of that pipe. So yeah, that's fun.
What noise is that?
I don't know.
That sounds like a compressor going. This is fun.
This is a good.
Well,
fun.
Who knows? But you're right. There are even if you go into a vault and you have to go over a set of valves or under something like that, then there's oftentimes you have to have a full retrieval system. Because you just if you get on the other side of, a piece of pipe and pass out, we got to be able to get you back out.
Yeah.
And so you literally have, a harness and something to pull you back out. Yeah. It's scary. And I've been in vaults that manhole vaults where they drop down like 20 feet and then go sideways and stuff where you literally need 3 people to do this job. You need somebody watching from the top. You need somebody, you have to have a rescue plan and everything. They're absolutely scary. My experience with vaults was that there's a set of rules for a reason.
Yeah.
And we got to follow them. But so one of the things that we were talking about though is if you're put in a position where you don't feel comfortable and, depending on the type of management you're dealing with, sometimes they can guilt trip you into doing stuff. Sometimes they can look at you and go, hey man, the other guys do it, or, you won't get caught. And if you do, we'll pay the fine or whatever like that. It's that can,
like having an expectation that you're going to have a license. And, if you're in a different state and you go to you're in Oregon and you want to go to Washington, you have to have a license.
You do. Yeah.
And if your boss goes, you need to go get your license, and then holds it against you when they sell work and then you can't go do the work because you don't have the license.
Yeah. Yeah.
And every single time you see it on the schedule, like you keep scheduling me.
Yeah.
Like we keep having to have the same conversation.
And it's not
every single time you keep saying the same thing. It's your fault because you haven't gotten your license yet.
So you're the bad apple.
Yeah, you're the one that's at fault. If you had just gotten your license, then this wouldn't be an issue.
Even if you went out and got your license today, let's suppose you ran up, took your ELO 6 and passed the test, and the LNI gives you your license in a couple of weeks. You have an ISET 2, which you already have. You have an ELO 6. That doesn't mean you can work in Vancouver. That just means you can work in Washington.
Right.
Vancouver is its own state. So now they've got their own system. And because of the company you work for, they've got to be registered with Vancouver themselves. So Vancouver registers your company as a contractor and you as an employee of that contractor doing work. So you can't, I could never, since I'm not licensed in Washington for sprinkler work at all, I couldn't even test sprinkler systems out there and didn't.
Yeah.
Like if I replaced a flow switch or a valve or a tamper, not a valve, but a tamper, I had a fitter, a licensed Washington sprinkler tester to come work on the system with me because I'm not licensed to do that. And they take that stuff very seriously. So it's like all these jurisdictions, this is just in, our little neck of the woods. If you were to work in the Sound around in Seattle, each jurisdiction, Everett has one thing. Seattle has theirs. Milton has theirs. I don't know that's where Tracy, that's why real work and the work that they're doing is saying, look, this is incredibly difficult to navigate if you don't know what each little tiny
municipality is.
Municipality. I want to say fiefdom, but there's actually a fief, so it doesn't work out. But you know what I'm saying? What each municipality wants. Because it's tough to get all those licensing. And I still maintain my, ELO 6 and ADO 6 and stuff like that, even though I don't work in the state, just in case.
You gotta go.
What happens if What happens if I get, bounced out tomorrow and
Yeah.
I got to go back and, hit the streets? Well, then I got to keep my qualifications up. So I got to be able to work up there. But I will tell you that the one fine I got was from LNI, and they do not screw around, my friends. And it was a legit hit. I was a superintendent. I was a supervising electrician. So I supervised, didn't know it, but I supervised a couple of branches that I was unaware of. And ignorance of the law and ignorance of what you're supervising, that's on me, boo.
Yeah.
That's not on anybody else. Well, a guy went out and did a parts and smarts job and landed the wires on a tamper and a water flow for the electrician, for the person who was contracted to do it, because they could not understand it.
Yeah.
That's another story. But so the technician who was doing the programming and providing the parts said, look, I'll just do this for you. And that's what the inspector hit, was him doing that work. And I'm sure he got a fine.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But I know that I did as the supervising electrician.
Right.
And it was hefty. And I'm telling you that when we had when it came, because I said pay the fine. I told the manager up there, pay my fine and let's move on. And I already pulled my supervisor card that next day.
Yeah.
That next day I pulled it. I said, if I had known you were doing work under my license, I would have at least known what was going on up there.
Sure.
And I would have at least checked out that your people weren't idiots.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's on me too. So he said, nah, we're going to fight it. We're going to win. I'm like, okay, you're not going to win. And the paralegal for the Attorney General's office from the state of Washington, she was up in Olympia, she got a hold of me. She goes, oh, let's go through the process. And she started telling me how it's going to go. And she goes, yeah, the AG gets this, which, that's what happens. The AG is your prosecutor.
Yeah.
And we had the pre-trial meeting while I was at the Cosmo on vacation in Vegas.
Yeah.
And the judge came on the phone and said, this is how it's going to work. Okay. You're going to show up in a suit. You're going to show up with the NEC. You're going to have a checkbook. You're going to, we're going to go through the thing. I'm going to show you where you're in violation of the code.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to adjudicate. And then that's going to be that. And then the guy who was also on the phone, the manager who was also on the phone when we hung up and reconnected, said, I'll pay the fine.
Yeah.
I said, that's wonderful. That's just all I could ask for.
Yeah.
So they were like, no, you're in violation, clear violation. And this is just how this works. And this is just a formality. Don't go sideways with LNI. Just don't go sideways with BCD. Like, just don't. Like, your license and your livelihood is much more important than that. And so I took the hit, and what am I going to do? Like, I'm at fault. Like, they worked under my license and did something that you wouldn't think in most states. Like in this state, you wouldn't believe the stuff we've seen here, know, and as I've mentioned before, I've been in Vancouver and scratched my head and went, wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
But, here we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just because you've seen, spaghetti thrown at a wall and with screws and wire nuts doesn't mean that it gives you the right to do the same thing.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, and I think that there's, this is a much bigger conversation, I think, but there is that the phrase work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
Right. And
come home alive.
Yeah.
Come home.
Well, but my point is, I think that we are in a place now with our industry, with this trade, maybe specifically, but I think it also applies to high voltage guys as well. I'm trying to say this without sounding like an asshole, because I don't want to come off as an asshole, but I think we're at a point now where our industry is capable of working smarter.
I think you're right.
And not working as hard to get the same things done. And I've been thinking about this for a long time because I've had people who tell me, like, I'm an installer and I do installations, and people tell me, oh, but you're really just a service tech, because you're not really willing to do what it takes to what I've done in my career to make a job happen. And I laugh at that because I go, okay, but the things that you were doing because that's what the trade required at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Now we can do things easier. Like
Mm-hmm.
I can run 5 panels off of one panel. Like
Right.
I
You
can
do more
I
with-
can
with
do
less.
so much more.
Yeah.
Right? Like LED horn strobes allow me to put 30 freaking devices on
Yeah.
one circuit if I really want to.
Yeah.
I
And not
mean,
overload it.
Yeah, most people would be like, "Oh, I don't think you should do that." And I agree, you probably shouldn't because it's just like it's easier to service if there's smaller circuits.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't. Like,
Yeah.
but the technology is there.
Yeah.
You know, Dave Gilson goes on and on and on about power over Ethernet lighting,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to run 120 Romex and MC out into the building to get lights
Mm-hmm.
on anymore. We can run Ethernet.
Yep.
We can run 5 Ethernet cables
And do it all.
and do everything.
Yeah.
And we control it from our phone.
Yeah.
We can work smarter and not work harder. And I think that we're at a place now where there's a former generation that are the managers and they expect us to work as hard as they did when we don't have to work as hard.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And so it's finding that balance as well, because the last thing I want is for my company, and even just more specifically my manager or my coworkers, to look at me and go, he doesn't really want to work. He doesn't really want to do. He doesn't really want to be here to do the job, you know. And it's like, that's not true. I like getting up and having something to do. I take pride in my work.
Mm-hmm.
You can ask my wife as we drive through Portland. I go, I
I've
work
been
there. I
I've
work
been
there. I
I've
do
been
the fire system
My
there.
wife hates that.
Yeah.
She hates
Yeah,
that.
and there's
I've been to that
memes.
building.
There's memes about it everywhere. I think my wife has found tons of memes because it's a trade wife thing.
It
It's
is. It is.
trade spouse thing. You know, like
You should see the basement of that place. That building's on springs.
yeah,
I'm not kidding you.
this place is haunted. That place is
haunted.
great. They serve great. I don't know.
Thai food. That guy poked me in the eye.
The Rodney downtown used to give away free coffee. It doesn't anymore. You know, like you
Yeah.
take pride in what you do, and
especially
and
when
I
you're
very
in a
much
community
do.
that's so small.
Yeah.
Where, you know, like, I'll have a text call me and go, "Hey, I'm working at this place. Where are you working at?" "Oh, I've been there."
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, like you and I had that fun experience where I showed up to a job
Mhm.
and I was like, I need to figure out the master code to get into this panel.
Oh yeah, super fun.
And then I saw who had done the job, and I was an apprentice with him.
Mhm.
And I called him up and I was like, hey, haven't
Help
talked
me
to you in
out
a couple
here.
of years. Can I get the number for this panel? And he's like, let me double check and make sure I'm okay with that.
Mhm.
Calls you. It's like, hey, this guy's asking for this. And you're like, hell yeah, man, do it.
Hells yeah. That's what I said.
and so then we boom, that's my chair. We got it done. All
You're
because we
cracking
all
me
knew
up.
who each other were.
Yeah,
we had
all
each
know
other's cell phones,
Yeah,
right? Like
exactly. Yeah.
we
I'm
work
not-
for 3 different companies and we're all still like the community. That's why I get scared to say certain things and sound, you know, because it's like,
Yeah.
I know somebody can email us or they probably know who I am and are going to be like, I cannot believe you said this.
Yeah, that could happen.
You know?
That can happen. Or, you know, I go home and someone's there tapping on my. I've come here to take care of business. But you know, in all reality, though, I have been harping on a lot of these things for a long time, like guilt trips. You know, to if someone gives you a guilt trip to do something that you know is wrong, then now it's a matter of your integrity. Where are you going to go with it? You know, what are you going to do with it? Are you gonna fall for it? Are you going to do it? Are you going to say no? And I've had some pretty, you know, I've had some real ugly scenes in my career where
Oh my gosh.
I think you need a new chair.
Yeah.
I think that one has given up the ghost. Try this one.
I'm just going to stand.
I can't stop laughing.
The chair is slowly breaking.
chair is-
I'm just standing now, just so everybody's aware.
So it's not just the monkeys in the ceiling. It's also the chair monkeys.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, it's I've had some real, I can get my ire up, man. And I, people who know me know that there's times when I've lost my fashizzle, and, I'm not proud of those moments, but I'm also, it generally takes quite a bit to push me into that position. But
sure.
But
once you're there,
it's weird that I'll tell people, hey, if you push here and here and here, if you do the 3-finger salute on this keyboard, your computer will come to a complete stop.
Yeah.
Well, if you do the 3-finger salute on me, there's a good chance I'll headbutt you and drop you like a sack of hammers. So you may want to decide not to do that. But, every once in a while I get somebody who goes, hey man, look what happens when we do this.
Yeah.
And then when I lose my crap, they go, you lost your crap. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, man. I mean, there's a shirt that says, don't do that. And you did it. So I don't know what to say, but, yeah. And I'm not saying that that's right, or I'm not saying that's right. As God is my witness, there's a trend I'm trying to change in that realm, but I'm 60. I don't know that the rudder on this Titanic is really, even though you've turned it all the way, that it's capable of turning the ship as fast as it needs to turn. There's just some things.
The currents are deep.
The stupidity runs deep with me. But that's why I'm frank and I'm open about this with people.
Yeah.
Even in the classroom. I mean, I'm telling people, look, I don't have all the answers, and I'm not a saint. You don't have any wings on me.
Yeah.
I've made plenty of mistakes, but damn it, I'll tell you the mistakes I've made, and hopefully you've learned. Learn from me. Like, hey, you know what? This idiot did this, and this was the repercussions, the jail, right, or whatnot. But there's always these things like permits. You're on a job without a permit, or you're dropping 120 on a panel because you can't get a high voltage guy out there, and and you've locked it out or tagged it out or whatever. Or you're,
so I guess that's an interesting one. I was having a conversation with someone. Literally, if you're panel swapping, you
cannot do the 120.
You can't. You do not take the 120 off.
No.
Really?
No.
That's interesting.
That is a high voltage. That you cannot work above 100 volt amps, period. I don't care if it's tagged out. I don't care if it's just not your domain. That is the high voltage domain.
And even if you turn the breaker off, you put the lock on the breaker.
I'm telling you, if you call up the electrical inspector and say, hi,
I have an LEA. I'm
Mike,
on fire alarm.
And my license is umpty-frat. And if I land the 120 on this, if I just land the wires, even though they're not even connected to anything, am I in violation of the law? And I will almost put money on it that he's going to say, if it's white, black, and green, it ain't for you.
Yeah.
But now there may be some exceptions to the rule. I have not found one.
Yeah.
But now in Washington, there was a caveat that allowed us to do that. And they actually took that caveat away, as I understand.
Oh, really?
So I don't even in Washington, I can't do that. So I don't push the boundaries. You know what I do? I would budget in, because we, at PSI, I had firms I worked with all the time.
Sure.
Like all the time. I would pick up the phone and they would be right there. And we knew it. We had a good working relationship. And so, if I needed somebody in a pinch, that might be tough. But if I didn't, however,
if you knew what you were doing,
I'd send techs out all the time to swap out NAC panels and stuff like that had died because we know certain brands that just fizzle on the vine.
Sure.
On a regular basis.
Yeah.
And they were like, please don't do that. I'll just do it. And I'm like, shit, well, what am I going to do? What am I going to do?
The low volt guy said that?
Oh yeah. I've 3 or 4 technicians go, if you send me a high voltage guy, I will just, this will waste your time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so now as a manager, I'm having to make this call that, I really, now I'm pitted against my own technician who looks at me and goes, don't waste the money on this. I do it all the time. And so are we in that gray area? Well, of course we're in that gray area.
Yeah.
What's the right thing to do? The right thing to do is say, hey, the company policy says we're going to do it this way.
Yeah. It just seems, so crazy that there is law and company policy that says don't touch the high voltage. Mm-hmm. But then everything inside of a technician says it's not that big a deal.
I know.
I've locked it
I know.
out. I'm just taking it off, putting it back on
again.
And I've had people say, as long as you're not making any fundamental changes to the load of that circuit, then it's fine. Like, they find every excuse they can to justify it's okay to do this work, right? And it's all because while company policy, and because even though law says you can't do that, it still comes down to, what are my coworkers going to think of me if I sit around waiting for Sparky to come in? What's my manager going to think of me if I am sitting around eating a sandwich waiting for Sparky to show up? It always comes down to the personal connections you have with the persons around you.
That's an excellent way of putting it.
And
it should be absolutely cut and dry.
Yeah,
but it's not cut and dry. But I guarantee you, the first time you get caught, it's cut and dry. Then
you start
the first
going,
time
I'm done.
first time you get a fine, that's cut and dry. Just like my experience in Washington. You know what's cut and dry? If I use my supervisor's license for any company, it's cut and dry that nothing happens that I don't know about.
How certain are you about this standing of saying you and I as LEA cannot pull these?
I am 100% certain because the rule is
I would love to see any emails come in. If you're listening to this and you're someone,
maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I would, and I'm not sitting here saying
no.
But if you are listening to this and you're like, that's not true, we can absolutely.
So let's do a one-off. Let's do a one-off. You go out to change out a 6700.
Yeah,
that blows up for whatever reason.
Yeah,
because it's Tuesday, even though it's Thursday. It's Tuesday. Boom.
Yeah.
And your boss sends you out with a new 6700.
Yeah.
And you drop the 120 on that 6700. Pull the breaker, lock out, tag out, and replace it. Put it back up. Is that legal or illegal? I want everybody to tell me at halfwattpod@gmail.com.
There you go.
Am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah.
Is Mike on the right or is Tyler?
I'm not
Tyler's
even taking a stance. I'm not even taking a
Tyler
stance.
says he's already showing me his finger. He goes, I'm doing it.
If I take a stance, then I'm going to get a call from some lawyer or something. Be like, hey, didn't you do some work out here?
You're in trouble. Or you can go to Instagram at which is at Halfwattpod
at Instagram. Yeah.
But no, I really am interested because I'm certainly not saying I haven't done it. I have.
Right.
I'll raise my hand. I've done it. But I've wired an entire arena. Okay, because it was separately derived off of a generator, so we didn't even attach it to the power. So I get it. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like in a professional setting, in a company that is bonded, licensed, insured.
Yeah.
Contractor, license, all that stuff.
Right.
The requirement is, the expectation is that if you have submitted all that and you're not a trunk slammer and you're a part of the system, then the system tells you what you can and cannot do.
Right.
And so what we wound up doing at my last company was going, hey, look, every time we need to do this, we really need to have
Did you basically have them on retainer?
We pretty much did. We got a hold of IEC. We were using IEC at the time, or IEC, the group right down the street from us.
Yeah.
It's been a while. My head's foggy, but you know what I'm saying? They were or Hughes, and we'd get a hold of them and they would come out and do the work.
Sure.
Because they were contractors we knew and were pretty quick. But I will put it to you this way. If you have a panel that gets fried in the city of Portland, okay, and you swap out that panel, it is a requirement that you go and pull a permit for that panel.
Sure.
Even though it's a like for like swap. 6700 goes bad. You have the software already because you're smart. You put a new one on, you drop the code in, you test it out, it's done. Do you need a permit for that? There are people who tell you, no, you don't, because it's a like for like swap. It's just no different than swapping out a smoke detector.
Sure.
I will tell you that my discussions with the fire marshal and the electrical inspector are quite opposite. They're like, of course you need a permit.
Yeah.
What the hell's wrong with you? So I pulled a permit on every single panel swap we did for years.
Sure.
For most of the companies I worked with. And that's just the nature of the beast. Is this expensive?
I'm genuinely
to
interested
do it that way or not?
to try and get finger on the pulse of this, because I fully can see how a company would say we need to do everything right. We need to pull permits for these jobs, and it takes longer. Yeah, there's going to be a little bit more red tape we have to go through, but ultimately we're saving our own asses and making sure that things are done the right way.
Or hire a journeyman.
And then there's companies who are like, we're just trying to get these jobs done. We're trying to make sure our guys are working. If we're sitting around twiddling our thumbs waiting, then they're not working and they're not getting paid. So they're trying to look out for their guys. It's really interesting to me, especially as I go, like I said, go into my third year and I'm observing this stuff. I'm trying to take note. I'm trying to be cognizant of what is happening in the trades. Because ultimately I think leadership sets the pace for the entire company, right? Like if you are going off willy-nilly, shooting guns from the hip, then that's what your techs are going to do, right? Because they go, boss does it this way, so I'm going to do it that way. But if you're going, I don't do work unless I have every single tool set out, ready to go, and then my permits filed and everything's put away, then your techs are going to be that way as well. And they're going to go, okay, until we have everything, all of our ducks in a row, we're not starting work. And again, I have to go, is that really what I want to be like? I don't know if I want to be the Wild West shooter, but I don't know if I want to be OCD about this. There has to be something in the middle.
Well, you've hit something that every single technician who's listening to this has been in. Like every technician, even inspectors, have been in that position where they're like, oh God, what if you have a 120 volt duct detector that you can't get to clear? Then what?
Yeah.
Who's right now? You may have something hot you have to work on. That's even worse. So,
I mean, I think it's pretty quick. I go, it's not me.
Hammer.
Yeah. So
it's one of those things where I think that the expectations that are set by your company and your skill levels, your comfort level, and the standards that they set are going to dictate how it's going to go. And I'm not saying it's going to be competitive, because there are companies that will always circumvent those rules. When we found out about elevator testing, all right, I called every elevator company in town and talked to their operations and service managers. And I said, this is what the code says. Yeah. Therefore, if we start to if we need you, right? Like I'll just pick on Kona, even though they're well aware of this. But if we need you on site, right, then that is an added piece to the contract for the inspectors. Yeah. So it's going to be common that where the inspectors are going to do everything, but the elevators are going to have to go back and do the elevator inspection with an elevator person. And they want it on every damn floor, not just like normally, you got a 17-story building, we'll do, primary recall, alternate recall, top shaft, have a nice day, you do the rest. No, they want them there all the way, and they want both signatures on the cards. Yeah. I just found out today from one of my other, a guy I used to work with, who said that all the single shot non-restorable heat detectors are being required to be swapped out in elevator shops.
I ran into that with a guy with a elevator inspector, because we were given single use. Yeah. And
now, for everybody who doesn't know what that is, we're talking heat detectors that are not rate of rises. They're fixed temperature. So let's say a 135 fixed, so it hits 135, it melts out, you're done. You've got to replace the device. Rate of rise will change in 15 degrees in 1 minute. It'll trip and then it'll restore itself.
And so
notice kids, I did not say an SLC smoke detector. Please notice, for the love of God and all that is holy, I did not say an SLC smoke detector. And let me stop real quick before you continue. This is a huge bone to pick. Yeah. Okay? Because here's the problem. The original idea of shunt trips and elevator shafts was that a mechanical device, a heat detector, would change state, boom, and trip the shunt trip. Yeah. It could not be a restorable one or a restorable. I don't care which one you choose. But what doesn't happen is that you don't have a thermistor SLC device. in the top of shaft. See that. Then go back to a PLC, UL listed, fire alarm panel, and then change the state of a relay. That was never the intention of the law. Never. And so the fact that you've added that loop means that now you've got more things that could possibly fail.
Sure.
So when you walk into an elevator equipment room and you see on the wall, primary, alternate, shunt trip, fire hat, okay?
Yeah.
That shunt trip relay was never intended to be there. And the elevator people will tell you that. What was intended to be there was a heat detector with 2 sets of contacts, one for the fire alarm system and one for the shunt trip.
Oh, really?
Oh, really? And up in Washington, a guy I know who's an ELO1, he's a high voltage electrician who works for PSI, is a brilliant guy, got L&I to approve a test method for those heat detectors where you put a Camden switch in parallel with it and you push the switch.
Yeah.
And that switch activates the shunt trip and also activates the alarm system, but does not blow apart the the heat detector.
Sure.
That test method, L&I approved.
Really?
I'm talking the whole thing.
Yeah.
He got it approved, and it's so I sent that to Oregon twice.
Yeah.
I've sent that to Oregon to say, please, for the love of God and all that is holy, approve this test method for Oregon so that we can put a switch in that will short across both the fire alarm side and the shunt trip side and simulate the heat detector going off. You can put that right in the elevator equipment room. Click, shunt trip goes, reset the shunt trip, everything's happy.
Yeah.
Honest to God. So
you don't like the idea of having an SLC relay that goes off of a heat detector?
No, because let's suppose the reason that shunt trip is there is that if there's water coming down on top of the cab, okay? If there's a sprinkler head in the shaft, water is pouring down on top of the cab. There's people in the cabs. Oftentimes the motors now are either on the cab or up in the top of the shaft. Yeah. And they're small. They're not as big as they used to be.
They're pretty small.
They can be pretty tiny. What they don't want is water falling on top of the cab and the cab to be hot.
Right.
So that's a shock hazard to people and for other reasons. So when water is coming down, right? If it's in the equipment room, now what?
Yeah, it's gonna get all over the place.
What if the relay gets wet? What if the sprinkler? What if the sprinkler system hits the fire system? Now the fire system is out, and there's no way to trip the relay because the fire system's gone. And so the original idea was that the heat detector, physical change. Yeah. Yes.
We are shutting this down physically, mechanically.
And by the time the elevator people realized that we are off on this tangent and we're putting these devices in, you know, the fire marshals aren't necessarily talking to the elevator people who are not talking to, you know, so these things were approved for years. So I've seen them for 20 years. We've seen them. I mean, I'm not saying it's the end of the world. I'm just saying that the original intent was. So that's where we can get scope creep. Where what the original intent of the law was this, but well, heck, we do everything else with SLC relays and they're bulletproof. What the hell's the problem here? Yeah. And I'm not saying it's not a bad idea. Please don't get that wrong. Sure. I'm just saying that when I discovered it and I literally was talking to Warren Hartung, he was like, yeah, this was the way we really wanted it. It's like that cartoon where you see the tree and the swing and you see all the different configurations of the swing and the tree. This is the way engineering designed it. And this is the way that the salespeople sold it. And this is the way it actually got put in, you know, there's always different configurations and none of them are correct. Same exact thing here. He goes, we start down one path, but we're this discipline. You're that discipline. They're that discipline.
Different priorities.
Different perspectives. Yeah. Communications breakdowns, you know, personalities, things like that. Yeah, but anyway, I digress. But it's those expectations and skills. And as we go through those and we hit these different points, like elevators, now that we're changing out all these heat detectors. So tell us your story. You're changing out these heat detectors.
Yeah, well, I put in
taking out single use and putting
we installed new heat detectors for this panel. It was an elevator system that didn't have a recall at all. And we swapped out the panel, so we added a recall system.
Oh, nice.
And I put heat at the top of shaft, put a heat in the elevator machine room for shunt, and the Marshall comes in and goes, all right, let's test those heats. And I'm like, no. Right. And he's like, what? Right. I was like, if I hit this, it's done. We don't have any more. Bosch doesn't even make these anymore. Like, I was lucky to get these. And he's like, that's too bad.
There's a little gnome in Bosch land tapping one out right now.
He's like, sorry, man, you're not passing until I see that heat go off. And I'm like, okay, let me call my boss. And we got on the phone with a couple people, and we found a couple of rate of rise and just swapped them out for that. It ended up being okay, but it just was like this. There's so many factors. There's so many tiny things that, like, I did everything right on that job, and still it ended up just turning into.
I had an inspector inadvertently take one of those heads down, and it was, it was probably a single use, but whatever, and inadvertently short the 120 to SLC.
What?
Oh yeah.
No.
Oh yeah. On a notifier system, and I tell you what happened. It blew every module out in that. Yeah. In that everything on the SLC, all the smoke detectors, the relays that were there. The 120 went down the SLC. It was heading back towards the panel, and it made an immediate hard left turn out of the wire nut and onto the case, onto a J box, and grounded itself right there. Oh. And it never affected the panel. It never blew the panel.
Dude.
And I called my notifier guy who went out there and replaced all the. He goes, "You're not going to believe this." He says, "I replaced all these modules and these smoke detectors, and that's it." He goes, "The panel's still good." He goes, right in that J box, it made a right turn, and the electricity made a left. And he goes, that 120 actually, just where the wire nut was at, it was less potential there than going all the way back down to the panel. And at the speed of light, it just grounded itself out, and that's where it stops. He goes, here's my bill, which was affordable. and I was like, yeah, and stuff. And, and the inspector was shook up by it. I mean, it was really rough on the inspector.
Oh yeah. They didn't
expect that at all.
Jump 120, it's gonna jump.
It was a rough day. So tell me, you had read something. Yeah, we were going to talk about Milwaukee, the Milwaukee tool. We'll have to talk about that again. I'm sure everybody has
Gage down here. And we can talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, I think that would be good, and I'm sure that since we've had several podcasts about the Milwaukee tool experience, which was that was a blast. Tell me about this jarring thing you saw on Facebook.
So I was invited to a Facebook group, which I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook anymore. If anything, I go on Facebook to join kind of these kind of groups, writing groups, stuff like that. But this one is called Crappy Fire Alarm. So if you're a member of the Crappy Fire Alarm group, thank you for letting me hang out.
So this is fire alarm systems in bathrooms? No, okay.
Some of them are.
That was a dad joke.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I got that.
Nice.
I got that button right there.
That was the dad joke side. Okay.
So I don't know if it's going to record that. People might just hear us.
If people just hear us laughing, that was supposed to be a drum, like the
rim shot thing.
The rim shot thing.
Anyway, so I'm on this page, and I love being a part of this page. Okay. I really do. I've enjoyed just watching what people kind of bring up. They will post like, "Hey, I've got this issue. What do you guys think?" I from probably the first year of my apprenticeship, I had seen somebody configure a Form C relay in a way that I was like, I don't understand why he did it this way. And I brought it up to my journeyman, even Adam. People know who, if you listen to the show, you know who Adam is. Yeah. One of the smartest guys in the whole world. And I brought it up to him, and I was like, okay, if you're monitoring, say, the water flow, you got a Form C relay, you got your red, you got your black, you got your resistor, right? And you go red to red.
A relay you're doing this?
Well, if it's if you got like a water flow and it's a Form C relay on a water flow, right?
So when the water flow switch goes, it trips the relay.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
That's what.
Okay. Got it.
So it's a Form C relay on there. You got a normally open, normally closed, and a common. Okay. Right? You put your red on normally open. You put your black on common. Whatever you want to do, I don't care. Okay. And then you put your resistor between the two. Okay. Right?
Sure.
That's how. Maybe. That's how I was taught.
Okay.
How to do it. And that's how Adam taught me how to do it. Okay. It's great. It works. But I saw somebody who landed on the normally closed and then they jumped from the common to the normally open and then landed on the normally open.
Okay.
Right?
Why would they do that?
Well, that had always been my question.
Yeah.
Why? It still works.
Okay.
Right? Because you have energy coming in, jumping over, and then the common is attached to the normally closed.
Okay.
And then it works.
Did you see this on the crappy fire alarm thing?
Well, then I've been like, I don't understand for years. And then somebody finally posted that. And they're like, hey, this is how I did this. What does everybody think? And they explained why you should or shouldn't do that in certain cases. I was like, this is amazing. This is great. Anyway, this is a huge tangent.
It's not. It's what we're talking about.
The thing that I wanted to bring up was this story that somebody posted. And I'll just read this here, and then I'll show you the picture after I read it. This is from an anonymous member.
Okay.
Posting anonymously, as this will be triggering an internal investigation. Anyone ever come across something this crazy in the field? I was asked to remove an abandoned smoke detector in the women's locker room of a high-profile contract of ours. Turns out the smoke detector
was a camera.
In question was a spy device with a camera and recording device that was likely installed in the 1990s by an employee.
No kidding.
Words cannot express how sickened I am that the person responsible likely got away with this. And he posts a couple pictures, and you can see it's even says on the bottom of it, like the part that's attached to the tile or the ceiling, it says like camera device on there.
Wow.
Have you ever seen anything like that before?
No. No. Well, I've seen these. I mean, I've seen these devices.
Yeah.
But I've never seen. The only one I've ever encountered that was a camera and a smoke detector was at a hospital.
Yeah.
Not mine, at another one when I was testing for Simplex. And it was, all the smoke detectors look the same. They're all like 1.3 ion, low profile. I don't know what the number is, 2098 something. And I go in this one office, and there's this thing that looks like a UFO. I can't describe it. It was a smoke detector, but it was like different. It had these funny little fins around it. And I went, I wonder what that must be, a door drop or something like that. Or I'm looking around trying to figure out where it was, and it was right above a cashier's thing. And so I go up there and I look, and I didn't want to just blow smoke in it because I don't know what the hell it does.
Sure.
So I'm up there and I'm monkeying trying to get it apart, and I can't get it apart. And I could see something inside of it.
Yeah.
And so I lift up the ceiling tile, and there was a camera with a pinhole lens on it. And this was an old camera.
Sure.
This is not one of these modern ones. This was an old one. And a VHS recorder.
In the device?
In the ceiling. No, all set up in the ceiling. And so I went, okay. And I put it all back down. And so there's video of me, like a monkey, getting all like up in its grill. And so I stopped and I pulled back and I called their officers.
Yeah.
And they immediately said, "Don't touch it." I went, well, there's video of me touching it. Like my little grubby mitts are all over it. And the guy goes, "We're doing an investigation."
Yeah.
And I was like, so that was your camera. And he goes, "Just move along." Yeah. Smoke boy.
Yeah.
And so I did.
That
was the only time I've ever seen it.
I have run into something kind of like this where
that's crazy.
This story is crazy. I have run into a smoke detector camera, but it was at a tire changing facility.
But no one's changing their clothes in there.
And it was in a manager's office. And it was like, clearly he's just recording to make sure. Make sure. And I went to go remove it because we were doing a swap out, and it was like, this is different than all the other.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't look like.
And then when I popped my head above, I see the two AV cables going to it. I'm like, what is happening? Yeah. And then I look closer at it. I'm like, oh, this is a camera. Got it. Okay, move along.
I know that I've worked with a guy in the past who was a former security guy, and he knew all about stuff like that, like rocks and mailboxes and trees and stuff like that. He was really, and he said, there are devices that you could get Nowadays, you can get devices that look like anything.
Yeah.
Teddy bears, like the whole 9 yards. So I'm kind of glad that I'm in my little universe where I'm at, because they have rules up on the hill, like no camera.
Right.
There's no cameras installed that they don't know about, period.
Mm-hmm.
Like, period. So if you do run into a camera, and if it was like, say, in a restroom, then you just report it. And then they do. And we have their own investigative stuff. I don't know. I can't even tell you if that's ever happened. I'm sure that has, but because you have your own police force, they're like, mum's the word. So whatever happens on that, I don't know about, but that right there, what you're showing me, that would be ugly. Like, that would be bad. Cause if, you're violating people's rights, I mean, my God, that's just wrong, dude.
Yeah, I'm looking through the comments. Yeah, there's another picture of somebody else posted a different camera.
That looks more like
smoke with a camera in it.
That's crazy. And see, look at that. Go back and look at that picture.
Yeah.
So see the little spots all over it. That's from flies. So that's been there a long
time. Yeah.
We had one of those in one office where I used to work at. Everybody knew about it. It was there, but it looked like the safe or something like that. They just videoed the safe, so everybody knew it was there, but it was not meant to be hidden. It just happened to be that's the camera they put in, but not in a.
Someone asks, why was this not caught on one of the 20 plus annual inspections that should have been happening at that site?
Well, because it looks like a 120. That's why. Because it looks like a local
they just
only.
Assume
it's designed. It's designed to look like a battery operated or a 120. Mm-hmm. Because if I saw one of those, if I came into a dorm room that had like I'll take a dorm. I'll just pick on a dorm like in a college, and it had silent night system in it, and then I saw one of those smoke detectors, I would assume that was put up as a local only.
Yeah. OP original poster said room was fully sprinkled. Different company performs a sprinkler inspection that does the fire alarm. This smoke detector was added in an area where there were no smoke detectors on the prints.
So there would be no reason to go there.
Or programmed into the panel. No reason for the fire alarm inspectors to go into that room.
Yeah.
It was only recently noticed by engineering staff who assumed it had been an abandoned device from the original alarm system that was missed during demo.
Wow. And that makes sense. But I guess if there's nothing in there and if you've already verified there's nothing in there, I'm not going to keep going into a woman's locker room until I get arrested. That's just not going to work out.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy, dude.
That's crazy stuff. And I mean, that's more like more evidence of like, you just got to keep your head on a swivel with this job. There's so many today I did a job where we were doing a whole panel swap out, cell add-on. We had all the points sent in, right?
Yeah.
And then they're like, hey, you're missing 12. And
this is to the monitoring service.
Yeah. And we're
so they've got a database and they're looking and they say you haven't tripped these 12 points.
And well, just 12, just point 12.
Oh, point number 12.
Yeah. And we're like, what? No,
does that define
everything.
As, yeah.
So we go into programming and we're like, point 12 is dishwasher, heat above dishwasher. So we go back in, we go around the dishwasher area, and there's a couple of heats that are in the kitchen area. We set them off. Nope. 10 and 4. Like, what in the hell? What is going on?
Yeah.
And so we're walking around. We go through the whole restaurant, right? Like maybe there's another dishwasher area, And and we went into the other side. There's this like little I don't even know what to call it, a nook of a dishwasher area. And there's a hatch up there. And I'm like, okay, well maybe it's above the ceiling in that hatch, maybe. So I go back out to my van. I go past, the original dishwasher, past the panel, out to my van, grab my ladder. I'm walking back in. As I'm walking back in, I kind of just think, all right, I'm about to put my head above this hatch over on the other side of the building. Why don't I look above the ceiling grid, above the dishwasher?
Above the dishwasher.
I poke my head up.
There it is.
Boom. Yeah. Right there. And it was a guess. It was a total guess. But like, that's where you have to be able to just kind of like put 2 and 2 together, right? Like,
yeah.
You have there is a part of our job in any electrical field where you have to be a detective and go, okay, these patterns don't fit together.
Yeah, something's wrong.
And this is a perfect example of that. Why is there a smoke detector in a fully sprinkled women's locker room that doesn't seem to be it shouldn't be there?
Yeah. Ugh, that's creepy, dude. Well, on that note, on the creep note,
never change in front of a smoke detector again.
All the monkeys stop pounding on the.
Yeah.
So there must just be something that happens here for a certain amount of time when they let.
There's an event going on.
There could be something. So. Yeah, it could just be. I don't know.
Idea.
Just a flip.
And
it's
also that's the event is the reason why this chair broke underneath me.
Well, it lived a hard life. It's
I said,
it's in a better place now.
HVAC chairs, they don't hold me up.
That's okay.
I'm a big guy.
We're moving forward, and we super appreciate CCC for letting us use this space. And and this will work out. So.
If you're on the Crappy Fire Alarm page, reach out, say hi. We'd love to hear from you. Feel free to share stories with us. I want to read more stories from our community.
Yeah, and it is now that we've given you like 9,407 podcasts on our Milwaukee trip. We can safely say
other stuff.
We've done that. And I'm not teaching again. And when I do start teaching, I'll change. I told you guys I was going to be teaching Wednesday, Thursdays this term coming up. So, if you want to come as a guest, I've had several people go, I know you wanted me to come on and I was super busy. Well, get a hold of us and let's get guests and let's get some people besides fire. Let's talk to some security people. Let's talk to some access control people. Let's talk to some camera people.
Yeah. If you have crappy security, we'd be happy to do that. Email us at halfwattpod@gmail.com with your stories and comments and thoughts.
Do it.
Remember, Mike has put up a certain amount of money that we haven't discussed yet to see if he's right or wrong about being able to land high voltage.
Yep. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong, guys. Tell me I'm completely full of crap and to pack sand.
We'll talk about it on the show.
I have made mistakes in the past. There's no doubt about it. So
I know that we've been given at least a couple of fun toys from Milwaukee that we're going to be giving away. So if you want some free stuff, make sure you go follow us on Instagram at halfwattpod. And Gage is kind of gearing up to start doing some giveaways. I'm pushing him to try and get enough stuff that we can do like one every month.
That'd be cool. I think they could probably afford to send some
Not
stuff. Just
that. Hey, if you're another company and you want to get your name out there as well, feel free to contact us. I want to get remember we talked about it, the utility kilts? Utility-kilts.
I worked with a guy who wore them all the time.
Send us one of those. We want to give them away. Maybe I'll just keep it. But send us 2 of those. I'll keep one and give the other one away.
Sounds like a lot of fun. All right, kids. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Half Watt Podcast. We always want to hear from you, and we encourage you to email us at halfwattpod@gmail.com with questions or even your own stories. Funny, crazy, or praiseworthy, we want to hear it all. You can follow us on Instagram at halfwattpod to stay up to date on our feed. And be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And share us with a friend, the best way to help us grow. The Half Watt Podcast is a production of Now Hear This Studios.